Welcome back to the Municipal and County Solutions Institute Strong Community Solutions Series. We are joined today by the one and the only Becky Tuttle from Wichita, Kansas. Councilmember Becky Tuttle from Wichita, Kansas. Becky, good to see you. We're going to get right into it because you have something that you're very passionate about. You have something that you are very passionate about around the intersection of childcare and workforce development. But before we get to that, I want to, for the folks who don't know you, who are watching this from all across the country, mayors and council members and county leaders of every stripe, quick 30 seconds. Who is Becky Tuttle? How on earth did you wind up on council? And how are you today?
I am great. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I'm kind of like a little kid on the first day of kindergarten today because I'm so excited to share this great information that our community is doing together. But I started my career as a school counselor, so this is part of the reason that I'm interested in this topic. I was also an adolescent substance abuse counselor, and then I morphed into public health. And I helped in my community leading some specific initiatives that were important to me, important to my colleagues and my community members. And so I was approached to fulfill the last year of a term on city council when the previous city council member in this seat was elected to another office. And the mayor and city council came to me and said, would you be interested? And I was like, absolutely not. Nothing I want to do. But they kept talking to me and I kept talking with other people. And I thought, really, I'll just help them for a year, and then I'll kind of go back to my life. Well, then once you get in it and you quit your job, and then you also see, wow, this is another opportunity that I can be impactful in just a really different way, use some of the background that I have for my platform. And so I was elected for my own term in November of 2019 and then reelected in November of 23. So just my true privilege and honor to be a servant leader in the city of Wichita.
What a great story or great cautionary tale. Do good work, have people respect you, and you're going to get pulled into the arena. But we're glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And thank you for keeping that on point. So we're going to get right into it like this, as we talked about in the title and setting this up. We're talking about childcare here, and the cost of childcare has recently moved up significantly on the national consciousness of issues. It's in fact, but it's much more complicated than just the name it implies, and also more rewarding than most folks appreciate. The conversation I'd like to have today is how childcare and all its challenges and inputs affect the future of our communities. And my first question is, what's the average annual cost of childcare in this country, and how does that impact families?
That's a great question. The average cost is $10,000 to $12,000 per child per year in the United States. But specifically in Wichita, Sedgwick County, where I reside, it's over $14,000 for an infant or a toddler. And so imagine having 2, 3 kiddos, you're paying more for childcare oftentimes than you are your mortgage. And yet in Wichita and in Sedgwick County, we're only meeting 41% of the demand for childcare. And so if you are in childbearing years in the city of Wichita, our medical community recommends that you get on a waiting list for childcare, even if you are not in the family planning process, because it will take you at least a year to be able to find a place for an infant. And so what happens is, especially after COVID and everything changed, but if people aren't prepared, I've heard stories of people adopting children, blended families, whatever it may be, and then they're forced in the situation that somebody has to stay home to take care of the kiddos. And so we see people, and especially women, leaving the workforce because they either can't afford childcare or they can't find childcare. The conundrum in this situation, though, truly is that families, caregivers are paying too much for childcare, but early learning providers, childcare providers aren't making enough money to stay in business. And so somewhere, somehow we have to find a way, and that's what we're really working on in Wichita, of how do we come to some sort of resolution on these really complex issues, because truly this is a workforce issue. And I've had colleagues on council, I've had community members say to me, we're so glad you're working on a woman's issue. And I swear my head spins around 3 times. And I'm like, I don't know what you think this is a woman's issue. issue. This is a community issue. It's a workforce development issue that then becomes an economic development issue. And when our Greater Wichita Partnership which is our economic development partner within the city, when we reach out to them, we partner with them, it's always when in recruiting business and industry, they ask about utility costs, they ask about taxes, they ask about housing, they ask about public amenities to recruit and attract talent. They're asking about childcare because they want to make sure if they come to Wichita, Kansas, and we have a very strong, skilled workforce, can that workforce get to work? So this is something that many people are thinking about just beyond the public health community or the childcare community.
Wow. So you get right to the point on that. This is it's not just about diapers and crayons and quiet time and respite for parents. This is you're talking about tax base.
Yep.
You're talking about you said workforce development. I mean, one of the things I wanted to ask you, I wanted to say, Becky, put a finer point on it, but you really did. You're talking about the lack of quality, affordable, so that's safe and accessible childcare for families moms and dads who are part of the workforce. You have a shortage of providers that drives up a higher cost. Now that $14,000 number, I think you said for an infant,
for an infant or toddler.
For an infant or toddler is staggering. So, boy,
and keep in mind, so anybody who's watching this, they're going to have state regulations for childcare, right? Oftentimes, and I say we need to start cutting the red tape and start rolling out the red carpet for early learning childcare providers because they truly are entrepreneurs. And I hope we can dive a little bit deeper into that and what we've done in Wichita to reinforce that. But within the city of Wichita, we have childcare licensing. It's up in our public works department. And, we have our inspectors who actually go out and annually do inspections or upon complaints. And when I go with them to do ride-alongs, I see how complicated it is to be a home provider or a center-based provider. There's a million hoops that they have to jump through, forms, paperwork. People who are childcare providers truly, truly are entrepreneurs. And like I said, we'll talk about that in a bit. Children's safety is always paramount. So I understand the regulation, but there also might need to be some negotiations. And we've done some of those in Wichita. But in City of Wichita, we have 14,000 kiddos that are in our licensed childcare facilities. Imagine if tomorrow 14,000 kiddos didn't have a place to go to work. What if they couldn't for 2 days? What if they couldn't for 3 days? Where would all of those caregivers stay? Home.
Right.
Right. And so that means then Tuttle Inc., which really doesn't exist, but it's my favorite example, or Spirit or Textron or whatever it may be, they're going to have gaps in their workforce, lower their productivity, potentially disappoint their clients and their customers.
Right. And those are Tuttle Inc., of course, is the biggest company that you mentioned there. But Spirit and Textron, these are big time employers.
These are big
time parts of the community.
Textron and Spirit are the largest employers in our city and probably almost our state. I haven't seen the latest numbers, but I've actually had more calls and site visits with both of them than I can count saying, help us. You're championing this issue for the city. Thank you. Keep doing it. What can we do? How can we help be a part of this? And one of the things that we've done in the city of Wichita that I'm super proud of is we actually started a childcare workforce task force. And so we are doing something that I think really just makes sense, but sometimes seems novel, is we're asking childcare providers, what do you need? And we're asking employers, what do you need? Instead of us trying to guess as this, group of folks who are working on it. And truly the core of the think tank that started this is the city, and I can talk more about that and how I got involved and why. Child Start, which is a non-for-profit in the community who assists childcare providers, our Workforce Alliance of South Central Kansas, our Greater Wichita Chamber of Commerce, and the Greater Wichita Partnership. So never did I think these entities would coalesce around childcare, but we are, and we think it's working. There's a lot of work to do, but we've already made some great momentum.
I see. That's a tremendous story, Becky. One of the things that you mentioned, reference going back to Textron and Spirit and others, is you talked about whether you did intentionally or not. This is what I heard: getting shoulder to shoulder with these folks, getting shoulder to shoulder with these executives, getting shoulder to shoulder with the the families, and figuring out exactly what it is that the companies need to provide for their workforce, as opposed to, the city of Wichita or the state of Kansas, for that matter, coming in and saying this is what the regulations need to be, or this is what this framework needs to look like. You're actually sitting down and saying, all right, you have a stake in this, we have a stake in this. I'm not gonna talk above you, you're not gonna talk above me. We're gonna sit down together
Yes, that's
and figure this
exactly
out.
right. Because, I could speculate all day long what employers need, but I don't know. I also could speculate all day long what would entice someone to either go into childcare, providing childcare, and more importantly, staying and being a childcare provider. That's also part of the issue and some things that we're working on. But instead of, just speculating and guessing, we're bringing the groups together, and saying, providers, what can we do? We can't maybe fix all of the needs that you have and the wants that you have to be either, go in or stay as a provider. Same with work sites. What would be more helpful for you? What can we help? And then we're taking what we're learning, and we're taking these lessons learned, and we're chatting with folks at the state, and trying to see if there's any way that, regulations can be changed, legislation can be changed, not just at the local level. Now we're also working at the state level.
Gotcha. Okay, so I have two questions in my head. I don't know which one I want you to answer, so you can choose. Um, One is, I want you to answer both of these questions. One is, as far as, pardon the cliche, but right sizing, or getting this done correctly, with your local workforce and local economic drivers, job providers, stuff like that. This conversation needs to be had from the regulatory side and the planning side at the local level, not at
Yes.
the state level. State level can provide that framework. Well, maybe I just answered that question. Sorry. But then the second question that I have is, so Wichita, I mean, as great as Wichita is, you've got the Shockers, you got all sorts of other stuff
We
going
got it.
on there.
Largest city in the state of Kansas. We got it.
Largest city in the state of Kansas. You haven't always done this well. So what changes did you see when you came in and started looking at that this very important, very economically diverse issue, and it's all its impacts? But what changes did you see that needed to happen at the municipal level and
Sure.
within the code, within the ordinance?
And I'll just take a point of privilege to frame it up, is because of my background as working in education and then also in counseling. I got asked to serve on a child abuse prevention coalition, and there was specifically a work group for childcare. And I was interested because I'm extremely passionate about literacy, for many reasons. But number one, the number one predictor of adult health is third grade literacy. The number one predictor of adult incarceration is third grade literacy. So the better prepared we can get kiddos to go to K and pre-K, truly, the better their education opportunities and potentially the better their life outcomes. And so I was sitting in this meeting, and everybody's, talking, and they're going a million miles an hour. And I hear them say something, that there's an ordinance regarding the ratio to providers to kiddos in the city of Wichita that's more restrictive than the state. And I said, why? And they said, we don't know. And so I came back to City Hall. I asked to speak with legal. I said, can you pull every city ordinance, regulation, anything that we have regarding childcare, and can we start reviewing it? And lo and behold, we were more restrictive than the state. The ordinance that we passed in Wichita was in 2007, and no one had ever looked at it since. So we met with the state to make sure they were fine with it. They were. We engaged the childcare community to make sure it wasn't going to, do anything. Children's safety is paramount. But everybody agreed, get in line with the state. And so at absolutely no cost and not that much effort, I spoke with all of my colleagues on council. I say all the time, we have 7 voting members. If I don't have 3 friends, even if I have the cure for cancer, nothing's going to happen, right? So I made sure I had friends. I made sure they understood the scenario. We changed the ordinance just to get in line with the state. And we opened up over 600 childcare spots within our city. Now, I mentioned earlier, we are only meeting 41% of the capacity. So we still have a long way to go, but potentially 600 more spots. And especially in home providers, it could be an enticement for more providers to go in if they can earn more income, or to stay at being a childcare provider if they can earn more income. So great success, super excited, got lots of momentum. We're actually in the front page of the paper of the city of Wichita for doing something something good. That had been a bit. And so now other people have been engaged and I care. I want to learn more. And so we kind of took this on a road show, if you will, especially with the Greater Wichita Partnership and the Chamber and the Workforce Alliance. And we've presented at all of our Rotaries in town on what we're doing, just trying to keep the momentum and interest going. There's another ordinance that I'm working on. I hope will be changed by the end of the year. Again, we're not in line with the state, but no one knows why. So let's fix it. Why are we having unnecessary regulation at the local level if we don't need to? So that will be the next thing that we're doing. And then I think kind of the final part of it, and maybe weave it into another conversation, another question, but the emphasis on entrepreneurism for childcare and early learning and how important that has been in continuing to move this initiative forward.
Right. So creating opportunity. So here we are, we're talking about well, everything that we talk about with MCSI and on the Strong Community Solutions series is about opportunity. So it's not just, you know, in this conversation, creating opportunity so your kids can get childcare so you can go to work, but entrepreneurialism and these other things for childcare providers, for people to grow from a homegrown business, taking care and serving kids and serving other families, to maybe Title Link becomes that much bigger. They have facilities all across the all across the city, expanding the county and expanding the state.
I love it.
I mean that's the opportunity word cloud. You know, that's the biggest word that we focus in for MCSI is, you know, opportunity to create economic mobility so folks can change their situation, and that's a tremendous issue.
And what I think is the part that maybe is lost on some folks is that child care providers are entrepreneurs. If you have a home child care facility, you are an entrepreneur. Wichita is known as a city of entrepreneurs. We started Pizza Hut, White Castle, Rent-A-Center. And now I'm really trying to emphasize that child care providers are entrepreneurs. They're small business owners. They do their own procurement. They do their own HR. They do their own taxes, just like if they owned a small retail store or a restaurant. And so how can we support them? And one of the things that we did that I was really excited about was back this summer, we hosted a childcare entrepreneur workshop. And we did not focus at all on how do you become a better childcare provider in terms of teaching the ABCs or, you know, the solar systems. It was truly business courses. And so we worked with our local university. We asked them if they would assist. We offered free CEUs, which is hard for childcare providers to get so that they can meet their local and state requirements to keep their licensure. And so for the first time, we were sitting in a room with childcare providers being taught business courses so that hopefully they can be more successful. Very, very few times do childcare providers go out of business because, you know, sometimes it's frustration, it's isolation, but most of the time it's because financially they just can't be successful. So let's help them be successful. So we hoped on a Saturday with free CEUs, if we could have 25 providers there, we would have done a great job. We had 100 providers there on a Saturday and had to switch venues during the registration process because it was successful. The other thing that we wove into it is during the lunch hour, we had a workshop for for businesses, the business community, because the state of Kansas has a child care tax credit. $3 million are allocated annually and only $100,000 is being used. So we brought in a tax expert and she talked to the businesses who were there, the employers, while the child care providers were still there so they could learn too. We offered credits for the employers from SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Managers. They got free CEUs for their HR professionals. We were hoping we'd get 10 employers there. We got 50. We had Congressman Ron Estes come and do part of the welcome during the lunch. So we got media attention, you know, just a really great event. And everybody left there like, okay, when's the next one? When can we do this again? Because it was helping work sites to learn more about how to use a tool that's underutilized by the state to help them with childcare. And the childcare providers were thrilled to learn more information, but get free CEUs. So for very little cost, some box lunches for some folks, we are able to pull off something that we think is really special. And we really are going to try and plan the next one.
Well, so equipping childcare providers and businesses with the facts and the tools that they need to make these good things happen in these communities, and this is an ongoing thing. So you are creating an environment where childcare providers, to your point, don't burn out, don't lose their way, don't close because of lack of money. Because as you pointed out quite clearly. There are always going to be kids. There are always going to be people wanting to be enter the workforce who have kids, and so there has to be that resource to make sure that those kids are not only taken care of, but also started on their educational path. Because I think that point that you made earlier in this conversation about the reading level being the predictor for future health and incarceration and ultimately cycle breaking is a tremendous issue. It's a tremendous fact.
Yeah, one thing that I just like to point out, kind of again, get you in the feels, is that, when I was doing the opening comments to these 100 providers, very few people go into being an early learning provider, childcare provider, because, they want to make money. They go into it because they love kids and they want to, support their community. And oftentimes they go into it because they want to take care of their own kids, and then they'll, have some other kids come in. So they may not have that business background. They may not consider themselves entrepreneurs. And so in my opening comments, I was referring to that. And I said, and I stepped gently on my soapbox and said, you are not in the babysitting business. You are in the brain development business. You are training our next doctors, our next teachers, our next military. And we need you to make sure that you can stay in business so you can do that. You are literally educating the next generation of Wichitans, and we need to be here to support you and help you do that. And if you looked around the room, people literally, you could see them, like you could see the pride in them that, like, I am a small business owner. I've never called myself that before. And so if nothing else, the work that we're doing, I think, is important in so many ways, but that will be one of the defining moments for me, that we're changing the culture of it's not babysitting. This is absolutely early learning that is essential for workforce, but then also making sure that we're getting our kids ready to be educated in our school systems.
That's a beautiful and great way to frame that, Becky. As we kind of near the end of our session here, maybe one or two more questions that I've got for you, and just kind of pull back up a little bit, because you had experience coming in, real experience coming in. You've gone even deeper on that experience, probably deeper than you probably could have imagined on council coming in. So you've seen and you all have executed things that work. Talk about either within Wichita or in other places. We'll call them Springfield, USA. No. Talk about in other places, fictional towns, if you want to give them fictional names, things that you have seen that have not worked, things that must be avoided at all costs when you're tackling this.
That's a really great question. I think the first thing that I would truly recommend is, I always say you have to build your friendships before you need the friends. So in this arena, there's been some other folks who get excited about what we hear we're doing. And so they think that they're going to jump in and, so and so is now going to start this group. And we're like, don't do that. We've already got a group. There's not enough time or resources to be competing within do-good organizations, right? So the other thing is, and I've said this a couple times already, but I think a grave mistake that we came dangerously close to doing, but we didn't, is we paused intentionally and had that interaction time with workforce, had that interaction time with childcare providers, brought them to the table, because we were getting ready to develop this master plan. And then we said, maybe we should run this by some of our friends who, are actually in the business industry and, have employees. And they're all like, no, that wouldn't help us at all. That's not what we need. So that was something that, we certainly avoided, and I'm glad that we did. We tried a few experiments that haven't worked, but that's okay. We said, we probably won't do that now. Maybe later it'll be more successful. But the one thing also for my fellow electeds across the nation who may be leaning in is, changing the vernacular of this is not babysitting, understanding why this is so important is just, I think, a really good lesson learned for all of us, that these are small business owners, they're entrepreneurs, they're part of the backbone of our community, part of the backbone of our our workforce. So let's do all we can to support them.
That's a great last word, Becky. Thank you very much, Councilmember Becky Tuttle.
And can I
Wichita,
have
Kansas.
one more final word, my friend?
You may have one more final word.
Yes. Sometimes I think also as electeds, people might be scared to dive into this topic because it does seem like a softer issue. It seems like a woman's issue, all the things. But in recent polling, and I know, Ben, you and I have talked about this, and you can certainly provide more context to it and data points, but 80% of Republican voters want their electeds to be working on this. 89% of independents want their electeds to be working on this. 99% of Democrats want their electeds to be working on this, for an average of 89%. So the majority of people who vote in our country, whether they have children in childcare or not, understand the need for this work. So if nothing else, I hope that motivates everyone to maybe, be more engaged in this important issue. And I'm available at any time for questions, for comments, thoughts, anything that you want. My mind and my door are always open. So please reach out.
That's great. Councilmember Tuttle, Wichita, Kansas, a tremendous conversation. This might be close to the longest segment that we do, and for good cause. Very, very difficult to break this one up. So thank you, Becky, for your time.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you, sir.